Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into something absolutely fascinating, the science of spiritual daily habits. Over the next 7 minutes or so, we're going to build a really wholesome understanding of the unseen yet totally massive impact of our everyday routines. You know, we so often look at our habits as just basic tools to get us through the day. But what if they're actually the very things shaping the core of who we are? Let's jump right in and uncover how these small, completely ordinary practices profoundly shape our attention, our character, and ultimately our sense of peace.
We usually think of habits as just ways to get things done a little more efficiently, right? Like making your morning coffee or plowing through your inbox. But here is the real question we need to ask ourselves. What kind of person is being formed by the habits that are already present in your daily life? This is a huge paradigm shift. Habits aren't just outward actions. They're actually inward pathways that train your inner life.
Think about a calligrapher's pen for a second. One single stroke seems incredibly small, almost unnoticeable. But repeated over time, those strokes shape the entire design. One isolated moment of patience, or maybe one brief pause to just feel grateful. It might feel entirely insignificant in the crazy rush of your day. But here's the secret. The soul is shaped by repetition. Those tiny, repeated strokes eventually shape the grand design of exactly who you are.
So let's break down the massive difference between ordinary productivity and spiritual formation. Ordinary habits train a skill, and they focus strictly on results. They're constantly asking, how do I get more done? Which, let's be honest, can be completely exhausting. A spiritual habit, on the other hand, trains the inner life. It focuses on formation. It literally changes what you notice, what you want, and what you value. It asks a much deeper, much better question. What kind of person am I becoming while I live this day?
Now you might be wondering, how do these habits actually work in real life? Well, the outward action is really just a doorway. Whether you're pausing to pray, sitting in silence for a minute, or just taking a deep breath before a really difficult meeting, the physical action itself isn't the whole point. It's simply an opening. Think of it like a window in a room. The window itself is simple. What actually matters is the light, the air, the space, and the clarity it lets inside. The real target is always your inward orientation that passes through that doorway.
Because let's be real, without any kind of training, our attention is constantly pulled into this chaotic drift. Worry, comparison, noise, distraction, hurry. Sound a little too familiar? It definitely does to me. Since our minds just naturally drift toward these reactive pulls, a spiritual habit has to actively step in to interrupt that drift. It stops you and asks, okay, what actually deserves my attention right now? I absolutely love this next analogy. Think of your spiritual habits like tuning an old-school radio. Peace, truth, goodness. That station is already broadcasting. But the static of everyday life can completely drown it out. Sitting in silence or reflecting on your day at the end of the night doesn't magically invent peace out of thin air. Instead, the habit just helps you cut through all of life's static so you can receive the signal more clearly.
So the really crucial takeaway here is this. Repetition actually forms desire. Habits don't just repeat actions. They slowly, quietly teach us what to want. It's kind of like learning to love the taste of strong black coffee. At first, you might just be pretending to like it and it tastes extremely bitter. But over time, your palate actually changes. Spiritual habits train your inner taste so that values like gratitude, patience, and compassion start to feel incredibly desirable and entirely natural to who you are.
Imagine going through life without ever taking a pause. It's purely reactive. Someone offends you, boom, you strike back. Anxiety rises and you immediately spiral. Every single step is harsh and immediate. But spiritual habits, they act like a cushion for your foot. The impact of life's difficulties is absolutely still real, but it's softened, it's absorbed. The habit creates this tiny, vital pause between a sudden impulse and your reaction, giving you just enough space to remember who you actually are.
We also really need to grasp that these habits aren't just private little self-improvement hacks. They are deeply relational. They place you in a posture to connect with God, with yourself, and with others. Think of it like a phone charger. The charger itself isn't the source of the power. It's just the means by which you plug in and receive it. A spiritual habit plugs you into a much deeper connection, completely refusing to let your day be ruled by mere performance.
Okay, so how do we actually build this into our messy everyday lives? We really need to shift our mindset away from the idea of a rigid schedule and embrace what we'll call a daily rhythm.
When people hear the word rhythm, they usually panic and picture this packed, exhausting timetable. But a true daily rhythm is actually about creating a reliable pattern of return. Just like a rhythm in music holds a song together, a daily spiritual rhythm gives your day a really comforting, spiritually readable shape. The beauty of this is that we don't need to manufacture big, dramatic moments to find spiritual depth. We can just seamlessly stitch these habits right into the ordinary thresholds that already exist in our day. Waking up offers a perfect moment for orientation. Sitting down to eat is a natural cue for gratitude. Returning home from work is an automatic chance for release. By simply mapping our habits onto these existing daily moments, we weave spiritual depth right into the very fabric of our ordinary routines. To start building this rhythm, I want you to think about the architecture of your day using 3 really simple questions. First, how do I begin? Beginning the day right is honestly like steering a boat before the river gets rough. Those small movements matter tremendously before distractions start multiplying. Second, how do I return when I inevitably drift? And third, how do I close? These aren't rigid rules, guys. They are fundamental human needs that give structure to our inner lives.
Let's zoom in on that second question for a second. The return. Look, by midday, your attention is going to be scattered. It's a guarantee. You've been pulled in a million directions by work, messages, and emotions. And I really want to emphasize this. That drift is not a failure. It is completely natural. A midday return habit isn't about punishing yourself for being distracted. It's simply a gentle moment to clear the foggy lens of your attention and gather yourself once again.
And then, as we reach the end of the day, how do we close? An evening habit is basically a way to gently gather up the day's fragments. You're asking what gave you life, what drained it, identifying moments of gratitude, seeking mercy, and consciously deciding what can be released. This prevents your soul from going to sleep carrying all the heavy, unfinished business of the day. It allows for honest reflection and, honestly, much better rest.
If you take absolutely nothing else away from this explainer today, please let it be this. A daily rhythm should reduce your spiritual pressure, not increase it. If your routine starts to feel like a heavy burden or just another item on your to-do list, it has completely lost its purpose. Think of these practices as walking with a supportive cane, not performing some heavy lifting routine at the gym. 5 minutes of sincere attention matters so much more than 30 minutes of forced, anxious perfection.
So to tie the whole shebang together, a spiritual habit is simply a repeated practice that trains your attention, shapes your desire, and opens your heart toward God, truth, and love. It is your faithful return, not occasional exhausting bursts of intensity, that quietly forms your life from the inside out. It's those small, sincere repetitions that ultimately aim the heart. Which brings us right to our final thought. Once your day has this kind of architecture, your inner life is no longer left entirely to the chaos of the world. So, the question I'm leaving you with today is this. Will you leave your inner life to chance, or will you build a place to return? Start small. Stitch these little moments into the fabric of the day you're already living. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and I really hope you feel empowered to start building your own quiet rhythm today.